This is part 4 of the Craftsman Emerson Gen 2 Drill Press Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 3, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will finish the disassembly of the motor and we will soak parts in simple green. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Continuing from part 3, we're going to be removing the bearing from this end of the rotor. Notice that there is the spring washer in the top left-hand corner, and that went in on this side. There won't be one on the other side. So we're just going to use a two-prong puller to lift that bearing off of the rotor shaft. And it should be noted that these are 6203 ball bearings, and they are a special 6203 because they have a 5/8 bore. So if you're going to replace bearings in this motor, make sure that you get a 5/8 special bore 6203 because a standard 6203 has like a 15 point something millimeter bore and it won't fit. But we'll just lift that bearing off of the rotor. And turning and turning and turning and turning and turning and turning and turning. It will eventually come off of there. And there we are. I believe we're free. More insect nest. Awesome. Yeah. So you'll notice there is a retaining ring there. We need to get that off of there. Reverse my retaining ring pliers. There we go. All right, so here we are at the terminal end, and we just need to kind of do the same thing. Tap it away from the stator. And then we will put a two-prong puller on there and pull it off of there. And now we should be able to remove that rotor, like so. We'll set that aside. Spring washer. Go ahead and tuck that one of the two wires that are coming through for the capacitor back through that opening, and then we can lift that terminal end frame. So at this point what we're going to do is we're going to remove the terminal bar slash switch. It's all built into one piece, and the thermal protection switch. Now on older motors, these connections of these wires are usually through terminals, whether they're a spade or a ring terminal. On this motor, on the bottom side here, all of these are soldered together. So we can either desolder them and separate them, or just leave them connected. And that'll really depend on how well they clean up as they are right now. But we'll get to that in a later video. For now, all we're going to do is remove the stuff from the inside of that end frame. There's 2 screws that hold the terminal bar and switch assembly in place, and then there are 2 screws that hold the thermal protection switch in place. And once we get those 2 screws out of there, we'll be able to separate the end frame. A lot of junk inside this motor. And there's your parts. And now we can just move the end frame away. So next we need to remove that bearing. It stayed on the inside of the end frame, so we're just tapping it through that opening until it falls through and onto the bench, like so. Next, we're going to remove that data panel from the motor end frame. And for that, I'm just going to use a piece of masking tape, and I'm going to punch a hole in it that we can wrap around that drive screw, or one of the drive screws. So these drive screws are in holes that do not go all the way through the casing. So what we're going to have to do is cut a slot in that drive screw, which is why I'm using the masking tape. I'm just using a Fordham or a Dremel with a cut-off wheel to cut the slot in there. We're going to basically turn it into a flathead screw. Now, if we're lucky, we should be able to stick a screwdriver in there and twist it off. Just unscrew it like you would a screw. You want to keep a lot of downward pressure when you do this. Otherwise, 1/2 of that head will break off of it, and you'll have to drill it out. But we got it loosened up, so now we can spin it, and it will just work its way out. And that's how you remove a drive screw on a blind hole. And we'll do the same thing for the other end. So the key here is to make sure that you're cutting that slot dead center on that head. And you're cutting it at the right depth. If you go too deep, you'll end up hitting your data panel, and if you do it too shallow, half of that head's just going to break off. But if you do it right, you should be able to get these off. If you've seen on some of my other videos, this works about 70% of the time. When it doesn't, you've just got to get rid of the head and drill out the drive screw. There you go. So now we should be able to pull that data panel right off of there. Like so. All right, so we have the rotor, and on it you have the centrifugal switch assembly. So it has a retaining ring left on there that the bearing backed up to, and we just need to remove that retaining ring. Like so. And then we need to remove those. Oh, I stand corrected. There's another retaining ring that's holding the centrifugal switch together. We need to remove it. Now we should be able to remove the two springs that are on the sides of the centrifugal switch and disassemble the whole thing. Pull up on that plastic piece. Now there are these felt washers or spacers, I'm not sure what you want to call them. There's two of them on each end between the finger parts or governors. You'll see them here. That's one of them. The other one fell. Right there. And then they're on the other side as well. And there we go. And that completes the disassembly of the motor. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of cleanup here and get some of this bug nesting out of all of these parts. I've kind of just sped up the footage. But yeah, this stuff is pretty prevalent in a lot of the stuff that I work on here in Georgia, especially if it's been stored in a barn or whatever. So we just need to knock as much of that junk out of there as we can. Oddly enough, the simple green really doesn't do a good job of breaking that stuff down. And if somebody knows of something I can soak these parts in that will break that junk down, I'd love to hear about it. But there's quite a bit of it. So after we get all this cleaned up as best as we can, then we're going to soak all this stuff in simple green. So here's the deal. Simple green is going to break down the paint, hopefully. It's going to remove, it's a degreaser, so it'll remove the grease and the oil and that kind of stuff. We're not going to put anything in the simple green that has graphics on it. We're not going to put any electronic components in the simple green. So pretty much all the metal and a lot of the plastic can go into simple green. But anything that has graphics on it, like any of those panels, the simple green will tear those graphics off of them. So we're not going to put anything like that in the simple green. And we're going to let this stuff soak for 24, maybe even 48 or 72 hours to remove stuff in simple green. Over time, it will eat away at the paint and make it easier to just brush off with a wire brush after the fact. And I am repainting this drill press, so I want to go ahead and remove as much of that paint as possible. So it just depends on when I'm going to be able to work on it next. And leaving this stuff in simple green for a couple of days or whatever is not going to hurt it in any way. Now, if you want to keep the paint and you don't want to repaint, then you're probably better off soaking it in some soapy water or something like that. The simple green, like I said, will start to attack the paint. Won't hurt the chrome. Won't hurt the Zamek, which is what the pulleys are made out of and stuff like that. And it definitely won't hurt any of the steel or cast iron. So we will soak this stuff, and then we're going to soak the column as well in simple green. And then after all that simple green soaking is done, in the next video we'll pull this stuff out and rinse it off and scrub it down with wire brushes. And then we will soak most of these same parts in citric acid, and that will remove the rust. But we'll get to that in the next video. This is just the simple green soak. So I get these, I think they're 2.5 gallons each. They cost me about $20 a piece. I get them from Home Depot. And the simple green is reusable, so I reclaim it after I use it, and I use it about 10 times or so, and then I'll throw it away and get new stuff. But simple green does not have a really bad odor to it or anything like that, so you can do this indoors. It's also biodegradable and non-toxic, so I don't have to worry about, killing grass or anything if I dump it out in my yard or run it down a drain. It's perfectly fine. But you're going to need quite a bit of this stuff for something like this. And that big bin has been a lifesaver. I got that off of Zorro, I think. At some point it was on sale for like $50 or $60, and it's just been awesome. So for the column, I've got a piece of 4-inch drainage pipe, PVC, and I've got a end cap on it, and I can fill that up and let the pipe soak in it. I'm just making sure we have enough simple green in there to cover everything. So here's that PVC pipe, and we'll just insert the column, and we're not going to let it slide down in there. We're going to move it down by hand, otherwise it'll blow that end cap off the bottom. And then we'll strap that to this column, to my deck, so it'll stand up. And then we'll just pour the simple green in from the top. So that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. In part 5, we'll pull all this stuff out, rinse it off, and get it going in some citric acid and see where we are as far as how clean everything is. And I appreciate all the support, and I will see you next time.